On September 11, 2015, one of the largest cranes on Earth, a machine designed to lift almost 3 million pounds, collapsed inside the world's most sacred mosque. The initial reports blamed a freak storm, an act of God, but the truth is far more complex and far more costly. The real reason for the failure wasn't in the sky or in the steel, but in a single fatal decision. A decision that would ultimately cost over 100 lives and an estimated $200 million. This is Hard Hat Industries, where heavy machinery shapes the world. Before we understand how this machine fell, we must first appreciate what it was. The crane at the center of the Mecca disaster was a Liebherr LR 11350. To anyone in the heavy lift industry, that name commands respect. This isn't just a crane, it's a marvel of German engineering, a crawler crane with a maximum lifting capacity of 1,350 metric tons. That's about 1,488 US tons, or the weight of 7 blue whales. When fully rigged with its longest boom and luffing jib combination, the LR 11350 can reach a maximum hook height of over 620 feet. That's taller than the Washington Monument. It's a machine designed to operate on the grandest scale, building skyscrapers, power plants, and in this case, expanding one of the most ambitious construction sites on the planet, the Grand Mosque of Mecca. Powering this behemoth is a V8 diesel engine producing over 680 horsepower, not for speed, but for raw, relentless torque. The crawler tracks it sits on are each over 50 feet long, designed to distribute its immense operating weight of about 3.3 million pounds. This is a machine that moves with deliberate, unstoppable force. A brand new LR 11350, depending on its configuration, can cost an estimated $20 to $25 million before it ever lifts a single beam. It's a masterpiece of stability, power, and precision. It was, by all accounts, the right machine for the job. But what happens when a machine built for perfect control is left to face the raw, uncontrolled power of nature? The most powerful tool in the world is still subject to the laws of physics and the judgment of the men who operate it. This is the central, unavoidable truth of the Mecca crane collapse. It was not a mystery. It was a failure of procedure played out in the most public and tragic way imaginable. The date, September 11, 2015, was a Friday, the holiest day of the week in Islam. Thousands of pilgrims were gathered at the Grand Mosque. The crane, along with dozens of others, was part of a multi-billion-dollar expansion project. But on this day, work had stopped. A severe thunderstorm was rolling in, and the construction site was preparing for the worst. The Liebherr LR 11350 was placed in what is known as an out-of-service configuration. Critically, its crawler tracks were locked, but the crane's superstructure was left in free-slew mode. This is a standard procedure intended to allow the crane to act like a weather vane, with the boom naturally turning to present the smallest possible profile to the wind, minimizing force. But here is where the fatal error occurred. The crane's massive main boom was left raised at an angle of nearly 85 degrees. In this almost vertical position, the boom and jib assembly transformed from a lifting tool into a colossal sail. It presented a massive surface area to the wind, catching the storm's energy like a ship's mast. The storm that hit Mecca was no ordinary downpour. It was a microburst, a sudden, violent downdraft of air that can produce winds equivalent to a tornado. Official reports recorded wind speeds of about 55 miles per hour. The Liebherr manual is explicit. In winds above 45 miles per hour for out-of-service conditions, the boom must be fully lowered to the ground. That procedure was not followed. As the microburst slammed into the site, the force exerted on the raised boom was astronomical. The free-slew mechanism was overwhelmed. The wind generated a twisting force, a torque so immense that it exceeded the structural limits of the crane's base. The connection points between the slewing ring and the crawler chassis, engineered to withstand millions of pounds of lifting force, were subjected to a violent lateral force they were never designed to handle. The steel groaned, then failed. In a matter of seconds, the 1,500-ton machine tipped, its massive boom and counterweights crashing down onto the Sa'i gallery of the Grand Mosque. It tore through the roof of the corridor where pilgrims performed a sacred ritual. The very machine meant to build and expand a holy site had become an instrument of its partial destruction. Why wasn't the boom lowered? Was it negligence, a misjudgment of the storm's severity, or a simple, tragic oversight? The answer to that question would be debated in courtrooms for years to come. Before we talk about dollars and cents, it's essential to state a simple truth. No amount of money can ever equate to the human cost of this disaster. The loss of 111 lives and the injuries sustained by nearly 400 others is a debt that can never be repaid. It is the true, immeasurable tragedy at the heart of the story. But to understand the full scope of the failure, we must also examine the financial fallout. A slow-motion catastrophe of its own, and a complex web of costs that easily climbs to our estimate of $200 million. Let's break down how. First, there's the machine itself. A Liebherr LR 11350 is, as we noted, a $20 to $25 million asset. In the collapse, it wasn't just damaged, it was utterly destroyed. That's an immediate 8-figure write-off. Next is the direct damage and repair. The crane didn't just fall on an empty lot, it fell on one of the most historically and architecturally significant buildings in the world. It crushed sections of the roof, destroyed marble pillars, and damaged intricate stonework. The repair work required not just construction, but careful restoration by specialists using rare materials. The cost of just the physical repairs to the mosque had been estimated to be well over $40 million. Then we have the project delays. The Grand Mosque expansion was one of the largest active construction projects on the globe. This single event brought the entire project to a halt. Investigations had to be conducted, safety protocols reviewed, and sites cleared. Every day of delay on a multi-billion-dollar project costs millions in idle labor, equipment rentals, and operational overhead. A 2-year delay alone could easily add another $100 to $120 million to the project's bottom line. Finally, there are the legal and compensatory costs. The Saudi government ordered that a payment of approximately $266,000 be made to the families of each of the deceased and to those permanently disabled, with half that amount for non-lasting injuries. With over 100 fatalities and hundreds of injuries, these government-mandated payments alone exceed $40 million. On top of this, the primary contractor, the Saudi bin Laden Group, was fined and temporarily barred from receiving new government contracts, a massive financial penalty and a devastating blow to its reputation. When you add the cost of the crane, the structural repairs, the crippling project delays, and the tens of millions in compensation and fines, the $200 million figure isn't just plausible, it's likely conservative. It's a stark reminder that in construction, the cost of a mistake isn't just the price of what you break, it's the price of everything that stops because of it. In the aftermath, the investigation clarified what many engineers suspected from the beginning. There was no mechanical failure. The crane didn't have a design flaw. The steel was sound. The official report from Saudi authorities concluded that the crane was operated in violation of the manufacturer's instructions during high winds from a storm. The boom should have been lowered. The incident sent a shockwave through the global heavy lift industry. It was a brutal lesson in the power of weather and the absolute necessity of adhering to procedure. Crane manufacturers reiterated their guidelines, and site managers worldwide were prompted to review their storm protocols. The Mecca collapse became a case study in what not to do, a textbook example of how human judgment remains the most critical component in any operation. From this tragedy came a renewed and sober respect for the forces at play on any job site. It underscored that the bigger the machine, the greater the responsibility. The hope is that for every life lost, 1,000 others are saved by the hard-earned lesson. The industry can build taller skyscrapers, longer bridges, and grander structures, but it all rests on a foundation of safety. When that foundation cracks, even a titan of steel can be brought to its knees. We began by saying the reason for the collapse wasn't in the sky, but it was partly. The storm was a critical factor, exacerbated by the failure to respect its power. A preventable tragedy that serves as a permanent, solemn warning written in twisted steel. The only real question left is, has the industry truly learned its lesson, or are we simply waiting for the next storm? The Mecca crane collapse was a perfect storm of immense machinery, extreme weather, and ultimately, human error. It showed us that even a $25 million crane is worthless without following key instructions, like lowering the boom in high winds, a failure that cost $200 million and, more importantly, over 100 lives. Thanks for watching Hard Hat Industries, your source for serious machines doing real work. If you like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Until then, keep your head down and your gear running.